One of the best debut novels I've read. Again, 2 in a row. High above a jungle planet floats the last refugees of humanity. Plant-made civilizations held together by tradition, technology, and arcane science. Here, architects are revered deeply, with humanity's survival reliant on this privileged few. If not for their abilities, the cities would plunge into the devastating earth rage storms below. Charismatic and powerful Iravan is one such architect. His abilities are his identity, but to Ahilia, his archaeologist wife, they are a method to suppress the non-architects. Their marriage is thorny and fraught, yet when a jungle expedition goes terribly wrong, jeopardizing both of their careers, Ahilia and Iravan must work together to save their reputations. But as their city begins to plummet, their discoveries threaten not only their marriage, but their entire civilization. Hello! Welcome to my spoiler-free review of The Surviving Sky by Kritika H. Rao. This book came out maybe a year or something ago. I remember seeing it being teased in like 2023-ish on my TikTok page. And I remember seeing the cover and being like, wow, this looks beautiful. This looks amazing. I'm gonna buy this and read this regardless of any reviews I see about it, which worked out great because I actually did not end up reading or seeing any. But it's got a lot of reviews, so I think it was very popular or it has reached a good sizable audience. Look at it. Just look at it. It's just so pretty. Truly though, guys, what a fantastic book. A god-tier debut novel. This is one of those books where I think the 3-point-something stars that it was given on Goodreads is an absolute crime. It should have at least been in the low 4-something stars minimum. Back to when I say this is a god-tier debut novel, I mean god-tier. I freaking loved it. Obviously, there are some issues with it, but I found myself enjoying it way more than like Robin Hobb's debut novel, Joe Abercrombie's debut novel, Brandon Sanderson's debut novel, maybe even Pierce Brown's debut novel. Am I crazy? I don't know, dude. Maybe it's just recency bias. Maybe it really is. However, I think that the cover of it, the vibe that this gives, might be like a little misleading in who the target demographic is. To me, when I look at this, I don't read the back. I just look at it. It kind of gives me a little bit more like YA vibes. Am I crazy? I don't know. But then you read the back and then you read it and the characters we're following are in their 30s, which hell yeah, I freaking love that. But I think it's clear when you consume this book that the target demographic is me. And I think I am not normal amongst who would look at this book and go, oh, that looks nice. This book is for nerds like me. As usual, we will go over the things I liked and then the things that I didn't really like. First off, I want to talk about the magic system. And I think this is probably why I say it's geared towards me. The magic system in this book is very nerdy, very intricate, very complex, and it's very, 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 very vital to the story. It definitely leans more towards treating magic like a science, which is what I love. And I do think that when you have a book that gives off like kind of YA vibes from the cover and you have such a hard magic system, I can see why people who pick this up, it wouldn't be for that. But the magic is just so layered. There's just so much more than it seems. Like I think on the back it says you can manipulate plant life or whatever, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. It just goes so much deeper, and I'm here for that. I love that. And it's also something where I think you would have to reread it to fully grasp what is happening, and obviously not every question is going to have an answer, right? Because this is only book 1. Book 2 is out, and I think book 3 is coming out soon. But this magic system was totally nerdy, and I freaking loved it. And it's just amazing. This was clearly written for people like me. But it's also very much not going to be for everybody. Okay, if you're somebody who really likes magic being mysterious and blah, 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 then it's not going to be for you. I'm sorry. On to the plot. I thought it was solid. I don't really have too much to say about it. I do really like how integral our two main characters' relationship was to the plot, especially Iravan's understanding of his feelings towards Ahilia and how that affects his decisions, and then how those decisions affect the plot. There is a little bit of like hidden motive stuff in this plot, which, is always something that I feel like everybody is totally down for. It was solid. Like, there is a kind of clear goal / direction that Iravan, for the most part, and maybe Ahilia too, they have in terms of the external plot. And so it was nice to understand where it was going and where it was trying to go, I guess. And you're not really left around like, okay, what is happening? What is our goal here? What are we trying to do? What is happening? And I think when a first book in a series does that, it's a lot easier to have your attention wrapped because you're not necessarily super attached to the characters, which leads me into my next thing that I really liked. and it was our characters. The characters I think were my favorite part, besides the magic system was my favorite part, but characters are close second. I really liked Iravan, and I think you guys will find Iravan's character development really enjoyable to read. He changes a lot in this book, and it's not that long of a book. It's like 500 pages. Maybe that's long to some of you, I don't know, but it didn't feel rushed, and that's one thing I do kind of worry about when I see a character with such dramatic character development, especially when it takes place over the course of a singular book. I'm just kind of like, okay, but it did feel gradual, and I did like that. I think it's really interesting to see how a person can change when put in a position of power, and how a person can change when surrounded by others who have a different way of thinking than you. And then it also like calls into question if you ever really changed at all. What if that was actually the belief you held the entire time, and you just finally found others who agreed with you, and then you felt like release? You can truly be yourself. Those thoughts in the back of your head where you're like, no, don't say that. You're just like, oh, maybe that was me the whole time. I'm not saying that's what happened, because I do think that change can definitely happen, and bad influences can change who you are as a person for sure. But you know, it calls into question what's happening here. As for the relationship between Iravan and Ahilia, I do think that it was really well done. I think the author makes it very clear that, without spoiling it, she is rooting for them, and we are all rooting for them. I don't know if that gets across what I'm trying to say. I know what I want to say, but I don't want to spoil it. But you really are just rooting for the relationship the whole time. And I think it's very interesting to read a book about the main characters being a married couple. Also, if anybody's worried about it, the miscommunication trope I think wasn't used here from what I remember. They are adults and they settle their problems like adults, at least during the events of this book. It's just what happens when they communicate. You know, are they fundamentally different as people? You'll have to read and find out. I also loved each of their specialized areas of knowledge. They're both freakishly smart, and they really do complement each other. Where one lacks, the other one makes up in terms of, you know, I would say emotional stability and practical, logical, scientific stability. They are a power couple for real. I loved Ahilia. I think Ahilia was so much fun. I really, really, really love how smart she is, and I really like how she's the underdog, or she seems like the underdog. I'm pretty sure she's the underdog, right? Because, you know, everybody who's not an architect is basically like looked down upon by all the architects. I really like seeing her prove her worth as a member who can contribute to society that has value in the same way the architects has value. Not in the same way, but you know what I mean? That contributes to the survival of the human race. I loved her. If you're enjoying this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Check out my wishlist sponsor and follow all my socials down below. My book talk, my bookstagram, my booktube, which is this channel right here. Subscribe to that one. Back to the video. Now on to the things that I wasn't the biggest fan of. The plot, I feel like the ending was rushed. It felt like a Brando Sando Sanderlanche, but way more condensed than it should have been, in my opinion. I think this book should have probably been maybe like 100 pages longer. Dare I say maybe even 200 pages longer, or it should have gone on into the second book. These events, I don't know, maybe am I crazy? I think that there was a lot that happened in like this last amount right here that could have been expanded upon. Yeah, that's kind of it. Even though there was like a set goal for the external plot, like what they wanted to accomplish, you know, what they wanted to do, it definitely felt like the first 80% was all relationship. It didn't feel like there was much moving towards the external plot line. I take that back. I don't think so. It feels like that in the moment, but I think it's one of those books where when you reread or when you look back, you're like, oh, okay. It didn't feel like it, but I think it does. This is a reread book 100,000 million %. But I didn't really have too much of a problem with it because I love their relationship development. And I thought it was way more interesting than the plot. And that's not true because I'm also a magic system nerd, and the magic system is so intricate to the plot. So I was really interested in that. All right. We failed to criticize the plot here. Okay. Except for the ending was kind of rushed. I'm bugging. The next thing I didn't really like, and I say don't really like, it's more like I wish there was more of. I feel like there was a lack of world building, but it's only book one, so I'm not going to be like too unfair about that. We got a lot more in the last like a little bit where, like I said, the ending felt rushed. In this last little chunk, we got like way more world building, I think, than the first like 80% of it. But I'm not going to be too critical about world building on a book one. I do wish that the sky, which I know is crazy because they live in flying islands, right? One thing that I wish happened a little bit more was that I wish there was more time taken to develop the island in terms of giving the reader a better mental image of what's going on and develop more about the intricacies and things of the actual city itself. And maybe we will, which might be kind of hard because unless I'm mistaken, I think different parts of the city like move around. I think the city is just ever shifting. Am I crazy? I could be wrong. So maybe it's hard to paint a picture when things are always shifting around. The next thing I had a slight problem with was, even though I loved her, Ahilia to me was a little too perfect. Yeah, I mean, she had like a sort of, oh, this is all my fault sort of thing. But to me, that feels like a normal reaction after you go through the events that she did. I wouldn't say that's really a character fault in her. It just seems normal. I think that the troubles in their relationship would have been more interesting if Ahilia, in my opinion, wasn't like too perfect. I had a crush on her though, so I'm not like too mad about it. But I think that it would have been more interesting if Ravan wasn't the only one in the wrong the whole time. I think that if Ahilia had also, you know, had some faults to her personality, then I would have been more interested in the relationship. And I was already very interested in the relationship, don't get me wrong, but I think it just could have been better. I wanted a few more layers to Ahilia. I wanted to see some more mistakes just because I felt like it would have fleshed out her character a little bit more. And yeah, I don't know. That's my really only problem with Ahilia. I think our side cast was fantastic. We don't get like too much of them, but I think it's very clear that they're layered. You know, they have flawed ways of thinking, but they're doing their best, you know, and I really like that. I really like that. Even when we can't get in the head of those characters, I think that, you know, after maybe like a reread or something, if you asked me to be able to explain a topic from one of the side casts points of view, I think I could do a decent job at explaining this topic from like Badavi's point of view, Nalia's point of view, Ohm's point of view. They all like interpret things differently, and I think it's fascinating. So I think she did an incredible job with the sidecast whilst not necessarily, you know, giving us their POVs. Incredible, honestly. And then the last thing that I didn't really like too much was it was a part of the magic system. I think that we get a lot of reveals towards the end, and I feel like they weren't foreshadowed as well as they could have been. I have a feeling that if I go back and I reread this, and then when I do, I better understand the magic system, I do feel like that there probably won't be enough hints to me to look back and be like, oh, that makes sense. That's why blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? Except for maybe one that I can think of. I do think the foreshadowing for the magic system reveals could have been a little bit better, or could have been a little bit more. But, you know, I don't really have that many bad things to say about it. I do think the Goodreads star reviews right there, the 3.5 something, I think that is criminal. This is one of the best debut novels I've ever read. 2 in a row. That's crazy. You guys need to read this. Rao here has an incredibly long and successful career ahead of her for sure. If she targets nerds like me, magic system nerds like me, world building nerds like me, we will eat this up. And her character works fantastic too. She will be a household name in the future. Watch, I'm freaking calling this shit. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I will see you in the next video.